So we've been in this series that Pastor Dan's calling the B's. Like B vitamins, the B's we need to be. He's talked about being fit. He's talked about being aware last week. And this week he's asked me to come and talk to you about this. When I look at that word, that's what I see. Ooh, be brave. And if you're like me, when I first see that word, a couple images pop into my mind. Maybe this one. They'll never take our freedom, William Wallace. Or maybe the newer story we've heard about, Desmond Doss. If you don't know this story, go YouTube this guy. His name is Desmond Doss. He's a real guy, true story. It's a story of an army medic who, in the midst of battle, his army has to retreat. And he's left there with the wounded. He's a medic. He refuses to pick up a gun. That's how he's going to serve. And after his whole army retreats, they're still wounded there. And he's like, I can't just leave them. Why is my life any more valuable than theirs? He stays through the night. And incredibly, he takes them one by one and lowers them down this huge cliff. He saved 75 guys. That's brave. And if that's what God wants us to be, we need to pray right now. Would you pray with me? Dear God, thank you that you're here. And I just ask that you would just help me disappear and help everyone just hear the words that you are going to speak today. And we give this morning to you in Jesus' precious and holy name. Amen. Some of you are wondering who I am. My name's Darlene Leinberger. Yes, that does mean I'm married to Pastor Bob, sitting right there. As a matter of fact, last week we just passed our 32nd wedding anniversary. 32 years. That's a long time, hon. I was a child bride, what can I say? I don't know about him, but let me start by telling you a little bit about myself. Some of you may know this, but I was born with a birth defect that was caused by a medication that was prescribed for my mom when she was pregnant with me back in the early 60s. They didn't know any better back then. The result was my foot was amputated when I was 8 years old, my right foot. And I've worn a prosthesis, an artificial leg, ever since. You know, my early childhood and teenage years were pretty rough. Thankfully, I had a great, solid family unit who loved me and they loved God. So in-home was great, but outside of my home, that was a different story. To say I was bullied is really an understatement. See, before my foot was amputated, I had to wear one of those Forrest Gump-like braces, you know, with the metal down the side, and my legs were different lengths, so I had to keep getting raised shoes. I was at the doctor all the time. But you know, the reason I start with that is I've also been known to say something else. Women's ministry, you got to use a pretty cloth. I've also been known to say that there's something else that's a bigger handicap for me, even above my leg, and that should tell you something. And for me, what's bigger than that, hold on a second, is my insecurity. And that's what this ball is. That's what it says. Insecurity for me, see, it's tied me down, it's stripped me up, it's held me captive, it's slowed my progress, and it's robbed me of my freedom. You know, I'm a visual learner, so God quite often gives me pictures like this. Insecurity for me has been like dragging the extra weight, this ball and chain, wherever I go and whatever I do. Kind of like my prosthesis is with me all the time. Now, hopefully for you, you have not experienced insecurity on this level. But let's get real here. We all face insecurity on some level, either to do with our relationships, our body image, our jobs, whether they're inside or outside of the home, whether we think what we think we can accomplish or maybe what we can't. Or like Pastor Dan mentioned last week, if you don't have any of those, I bet you have the insecurity of, did the bombs go off today? Just the times we're living in. You know, we live in a culture that compares, evaluates, and judges constantly. It's the atmosphere we live and breathe in. When we compare ourselves to others, you will find something to feel insecure about, I guarantee it. We might say things to ourselves like, they really seem to have it all together. They have a better job than I do. They dress better than I do. Their marriage seems perfect. And their kids never talk back to them. And they're always so well behaved, it's annoying. They never seem to have a problem. But if you fall into that comparison trap, the next thing you become susceptible to is negative self-talk. That's where you say things like, I can't do this job. I'm a horrible parent. I'm not smart enough. This is beyond my ability. No one will listen to me. I don't have anything to offer. I mean, after all, I'm not Pastor Dan or Pastor Bob. That might have been said the last week or so. By the way, negative self-talk, it's what feeds the insecurity. And I use that graphic intentionally. I want you to get the picture of, if you've got insecurity, you're trapped. But if you're saying negative things to yourself, it's just going to be destructive. You'll implode. You know, I'm definitely guilty of that. I've been known to, after an encounter or meeting I have with somebody, or especially after a talk like this, if I identify something that I messed up, by the way, I'm trying to be a recovering perfectionist as well, but if I identify that, I have been known to take that and just hone it. Man, why'd you do that? Man, you look so silly. Man, you forgot that. You're not Pastor Dan or Pastor Bob. But there's one man in the Bible that brings me great encouragement when it comes to insecurity. I mean, this guy had every right to be insecure. Of course, I'm talking about Joshua, who had to follow Moses. Moses was a legend by the time he was done. As a matter of fact, if you go to the last few verses in Deuteronomy, these are the last words literally before Joshua's story starts. The last few verses, here's what's said about Moses, okay? Since then, no prophet has risen in Israel like Moses, whom the Lord knew face to face. Moses knew him face to face. Who did all those signs and wonders the Lord sent him to do in Egypt, to Pharaoh and to all his officials and to the whole land? Remember when he faced them down? That was awesome. For no one has ever shown the mighty power or performed the awesome deeds that Moses did in the sight of all the land. It's your turn, Joshua. Try to follow that, right? Quite literally, if you're in your Bible, you flip over to the next page, Joshua's story starts. Here's what it says. Okay, Joshua, it's your turn. After the death of Moses, the Lord's servant, God even called Moses his servant. Remember him, my servant? The Lord spoke to Joshua, son of Nun, Moses' assistant, and he said, Moses, my servant is dead. Therefore, the time has come for you to lead these people, the Israelites, across the Jordan River into the land I'm giving them. I promise you what I promised Moses, wherever you set your foot will be on land I've given you. Now, if I'm Joshua, and I just heard God correctly, it's my turn to step up after the great and famous Moses, but my first task is an impossible one. I got to take the whole nation across this raging river. This was no little stream. This is a raging river at flood stage. You want me to cross them over that? But that's just the beginning. After you get across the raging river, you now stand in the promised land. Do you remember? They're going into the promised land. They now stand there. Everywhere you put your feet, it's going to be land I've already given you, okay? But this land still has to be conquered, remember? The spies had come back before and they had said, this land is filled with giants. Man, they could just flick us like tiny little fleas. But God said the land was going to be theirs, but still many battles had to be won. There's going to be wars. Now Joshua, he was a general. He's well versed in battlefield tactics at this point in his life. I can just imagine him being ready to roll once he gets across that river. I'm sure he's even a little jazzed up at the miracle God just performed. He stopped that river. They were able to cross on dry land. He's back over. Oh, yeah, okay. Maybe he's even saying, and with a little more confidence, that maybe God really is with me like he was with Moses, because he parted the Red Sea for Moses. He stopped the water for me. Okay. But now that he's over on the promised land, he's got those battles to face. General Joshua probably went, okay, now I know what to do. But what did God do? If you remember that story, God said, whoa, 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 Joshua, wait just a second. There's something else we got to do before you face any battle. Okay, God, what is it? You need to circumcise your whole army. Say what? General, are you kidding? Honestly, if I had been Joshua, I will honestly tell you, the thought I would have had is, wait, God, couldn't you have done this when we were on the other side of the river? It's raging again, remember? And now we're facing the hostile people, and we have no retreat. And you want me to incapacitate them? Goes against everything I know, but okay. I find this really interesting. After the army had time to heal, took 3 days, and it was time to have their first battle. What's the first battle they got to have? The city of Jericho. You know that story. General Joshua now has to tell his army, guess what, guys? Here's what we're going to do. We're going to march around that city once a day for 7 days. Then on the 7th day, we're going to march around it 7 times. And then at the end of that, we're going to shout really, really loud. I'm pretty sure Joshua had never used that battlefield tactic before. But here's what I absolutely love about Joshua. Even though he had every right to feel insecure, Joshua made a choice. He made a choice to believe God and do it God's way anyway. Even if it didn't make sense. And even if it meant he risked looking silly in front of a whole nation of people. I mean, you can't tell me that army didn't raise a few eyebrows. You know what I'm saying? So Joshua, okay, he's got to follow the great and famous Moses. God moves him completely out of his comfort zone into the absolutely unknown, and what some probably even said to him was crazy. At that very point, he could have started comparing. What if he'd said, I'm not as strong as Moses. I'm not as smart as Moses. I will never be as close to God as Moses. These people will never respect me like they respected Moses. These people will never follow me like they followed Moses. They are going to think I'm crazy. Which then could have led to the negative self-talk of, maybe I am crazy. I'm not good enough. I can't do this. If Joshua had done that, the rest of the story would have been completely different. Now, when I used to say that insecurity was my biggest handicap, I have to confess, I was mistaken. This goes deep for me. I know the roots of this are pretty deep. And I have to fully stand here and tell you, I'm not completely over being insecure. Pretty much what I used to say, if God ever asked me to do anything, was, God, I can't. I mean, look, what I got to deal with. And right here, I could insert several stories where God was absolutely gracious to me. And he's shown me many different things, many different pictures. But what he's shown me over time is that, Darlene, I already broke those bonds a long time ago for you. Do you see any locks on that chain? Darlene, you're actually running back to them and picking them up because it's your comfort zone. Yeah, that's true. But let's go back to Joshua for a second. Joshua made the choice to follow God and believe God instead of getting all tied up in the chains of insecurity. He was able to act, but how? How was Joshua able to move into this scary place of being the lead guy when he had every right to be crippled with insecurity? I believe it's because what God says to him next. Here's what God says to Joshua right after he tells him he's the guy. No one will be able to stand against you as long as you live, for I will be with you as I was with Moses. I will not fail you or abandon you. Here's what I love about God. God knows that's great, but Joshua's going to need a little bit more. I'm going to tell you how to do this, Joshua. So here's what he says. And yes, I've taken a little license. This is pastor approved, so don't worry. The red words are mine. This is how I read these next few instructions that God gave to Joshua. Choose to be strong and courageous, for you are the one who will lead these people to possess all the land I swore to their ancestors I would give them. Choose to be strong and very courageous. Choose to be careful to obey all the instructions Moses gave you. Choose not to deviate from them, turning either to the right or to the left. Then you will be successful in everything you do. Keeps going. Choose to study this this book of instruction, the Bible, continually. Choose to meditate on it day and night, so you will be sure to obey everything written in it. Only then will you prosper and succeed in all you do. This is my command. Choose to be strong and courageous. Choose not to be afraid or discouraged, for the Lord your God is with you wherever you go. Right? You see that? God tells Joshua he can be brave just because God's with him. Absolutely. But he knew Joshua was not him. He's human just like we are. He's going to need a little more instruction. He's going to need a little more encouragement. And I honestly think God repeatedly says, be strong and courageous, just because Joshua needed to hear it more than once. Right? You know, oftentimes God gives me one word for a year. It's one word that he usually will take me through, reveal to me over time, what's this word? And this one word for this year, 2017, came with another picture. The picture this one is that I'm so terrified I can't even remember it. No, I'm just kidding. It's the day after Christmas. My kids are home. House is full. We just get home after being out. It's late in the evening. Somebody lets the dog out. We all walk in, and I walk into our family room, and all of a sudden I see just this shadow in the corner of my eye. And it's moving quickly from the top of the ceiling down. Just took once. Of course, I just calmly stood there and thought, that must not be good. Yeah, I can tell you don't believe me. Actually, the truth is that I screamed like a little girl, Bob, what was that? Ran out of the room. Bob calmly, as he always is, it's so annoying, walked over. He really is, except when he's preaching. Just calmly walks over and he says, oh, there's a bird in the house. This is what we were looking at. You may think, oh, isn't that cute and sweet? I didn't think of that, and I'm telling you, it looked that big to me. Oh, chaos erupts. The guys are trying to figure out how we're going to get this out. My daughter is like, oh, please, you cannot hurt it. I'm like, just get it out, just get it out. I'm pretty sure at one point, it flew literally from one end of my house to the other, inside bathrooms, outside, it was everywhere. But when it flew past you, it like dive bombed at your head. So when it did that, I absolutely dropped to the floor. I'm like, whoa, okay, down fast. Pretty sure I'm just like rocking back and forth and just repeating over and over again. How did this thing get in here? Bob, get it out. How did this thing get in here? Bob, get it out. For those of you animal lovers who don't see that as a ferocious beast, I'll fast forward the end of that story as we were able to get it out. We were able to get it out safely. Everything was fine with the little bird. So, fast forward a month. My kids are now gone. My house is dark. I come home, I beat Bob home, and I go let the dog out the back door. I stand there, I'm like, oh, it's been a long day. All of a sudden, I hear this light tapping behind me on the ceiling. Oh, no. Yep, the ferocious beast that has been stalking me for a whole month came back. It's like he wanted to take over my house. What? Of course, my first instinct is to run and hide. Oh no, Bob's not going to be home for at least an hour. Now what am I going to do? So as I'm running to hide, I don't know why, I went and grabbed a broom. I figured at least if it dive bombs at my head, I've got something, to protect myself and say, get out of here. I'm just kind of like panicking, fear. What am I going to, I'm alone with this thing. My dog's no help. I'm alone. Okay. And then I heard God just impress upon me, be brave. Be brave. Okay, so I know the method that worked last time and included a big, large box. I went and grabbed the large box. I went and grabbed the broom. I start waving them madly at this bird because I know I can't pull off what the guys pulled off the last time. So I'm waving them constantly. I'm telling you, if this had been recorded, it would have gone viral and I'd be famous today. It was crazy. As I'm doing that, though, I'm just like, God, please help me. I can't do this by myself. And what happened that night? Instead of that bird flying all over the house, it only stayed in one area by the one light I had turned on when I got home. Flew around a few times. I'm like, okay. And then inexplicably, just flew out the back door that I had propped open for him. See you later. Pretty sure it's not because he was scared of me in any way. It was probably more like, that woman's crazy. I am out of here. Fast forward another month. This is a process, how God reveals things to me. I'm now on a women's retreat. And I go to my quiet time and I'm just like, God, I've heard you say brave, but I really don't like that word. Is that really the word we're going to talk about for a whole year? Let's whine. I really don't want to do that. I'm thinking Desmond Doss, right? Like, you're probably going to ask me to do things I'm not comfortable with. Example A. You guys should be up here. I don't want to do that. But here's what God said to me. It's like, yes, I want you to be brave, but he defined it a different way for me. He gave me an acronym, so I, as the old lady, can remember it. And here's what he said. B, be ready. Okay, it's not so bad. R, remember who I am and who you are. I am the king of the universe, and you are my kid. I had to cheat a little bit because there was another R that's really important. It says, replace all negative self-talk with God's truth. I can't need to turn to, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. A, audaciously act when I direct you. Now, this is how I know this was from God. I don't walk around using the word audacious. So in the midst of my quiet time, I just got to look up that definition. Let me see what that says. One of the definitions says, recklessly brave or fearless. Isn't that cool? And then V, the victory is already won. Miss Perfectionist, this is not dependent on how well you can perform anything. I got it. And then E, he took me, it was like a Rolodex of E's. Lots of E's just kept firing off. But here's where I ended. Everywhere you go will be on land I've already given you. He took me to Joshua. That word doesn't seem as scary when you read it that way, right? Let's end with Joshua's final words. I think this is powerful. At the end of his life, he's now served his whole life with leading the nation of Israel. He's worked hard to lead these people. And by the way, it does also say in Joshua that the whole nation revered him as much as they did Moses. And by the way, another interesting fact is it also says the whole nation of Israel followed the Lord for all of Joshua's life. Now that's saying something, because those people were not easy people to lead. You know that. But here's what Joshua says. He's ready to die. These are literally like his last words to them. He's like, I just got to tell you one more thing. Here's what he says. But if serving the Lord seems undesirable to you, then choose, please. Choose this day whom you will serve, whether the gods your ancestors served beyond the Euphrates or the gods of the Amorites in whose land you are living. But as for me and my household, we will serve the Lord. So I have to ask, what is it in your life that you're just afraid of trying? Or maybe what has your chains of insecurity convinced you that you can't do? You know, we all have the opportunity to be brave. We can say no to the comparison trap. This is how we do it. Say no. We don't have to enter into, man, they're better than I am. Because that's going to lead to the negative self-talk. We have to say no to that. But there's what we have to say yes to. And yes, I intentionally spelled it that way. We need to say yes to being brave. How God defined it to me. Not Desmond Doss. He only picks a couple people to do that. He's asking us to be brave. Would you pray with me? God, you know I don't stand up here today and pretend I have this all figured out. I'm definitely a work in progress. Forgive me when I still run back and pick up that chain and say to you, but I can't. God, please remind all of us, myself included, that you are with us like you were with Joshua, and help us to make the choice to be ready, to remember who you are and that we're your kids. Help us to audaciously act when you direct us, knowing that the victory is already won. And everywhere we set our foot, you've already given us. Help us to remove the obstacles we've placed in your way, and help us all to choose to be brave. Thank you, God.